It's time. So, I guess Armored Skeptic. I haven't ever actually covered an Armored Skeptic video on my channel. Um, Mostly because he kind of fell off the face of the earth after like Gamergate kind of died down a little bit, and I don't really know what's been up with him. But I do know that his skepticism seems to not really be all that skeptical anymore. Um it seems like he's I don't know, gone in a bit of a different direction with his content, and I find that fascinating. So we're going to take a look at just what is Armored Skeptic doing these days, and what's the deal with the moon? Cuz frankly, I don't know that much about the moon. You know, I know we sent a few guys up there at one point. We got some moon rocks. We got like a fancy mirror up there that you can still shine like a laser off of. We got like a little like we left some stuff on there that you can probably still see. I don't know, just some stuff and things. So I don't know much else about the moon. Let's see if what we can learn from Armored Skeptic about the moon.
NASA is not always honest to us.
We're off to a really great start here. Off to a great start. NASA's lying to you, boys. All right. One less than a sentence in. Okay.
I've displayed skepticism about the moon landing a few times now. I don't know for sure if the moon landing really happened or if it was all a big lie. I'm not here to prove that either way. All I want to demonstrate in this video is that people have good reason to be skeptical of NASA's claims. People deserve to be skeptical of NASA and the official story of the moon landing.
Sure. But that's why there are peer-reviewed studies about the moon and landing people on the moon. There are still people alive who have been on the moon. But for fuck's sake, Buzz Aldrin has punched people in the face over the moon. Hey, Crystal Hazer, thanks for jumping over to the Riverboat site.
There is a lot of evidence that sometimes NASA creates fake imagery. Sometimes they lie to us. I think NASA's real job is to create and maintain a specific perception about space. I think NASA is in the business of propaganda.
What perception of space do you think NASA's in the business of? Okay, so NASA lied about all of that. He's alleging that NASA lied about all of that, has somehow duped the entire scientific community about its discoveries and accomplishments, and they're trying to keep something secret.
Starstruck.
Yo, thank you for gifting a sub to Crystal Hazer. I appreciate it. Keeping the white names at bay, Ms. Milena.
The United States government had every reason to lie about the moon landing. It was the Cold War. The space race was really just an extension.
Okay, but like I've heard this argument 1,000 times, but like there were hundreds of thousands of people working to get people onto the moon. Like that, we're at the very least we're talking tens of thousands of people who would have been in the know to know whether or not it was faked. And there's been like 100 years, you know. There's been like so many decades in between the moon landings and now, where anyone could have come forward about this with like, you know, concrete evidence, and yet that hasn't happened. That hasn't happened because we actually went to the moon. Not only that, there are very interested parties in other countries around the world who would be able to verify whether or not NASA had actually been to the moon. Like, this isn't just like, oh, the United States is lying, or just NASA could lie about this. You are alleging like a global conspiracy. So who's behind the conspiracy? And to what end? And usually when we get this far down the rabbit hole, it's something elites, something Jews. Like that's you have to be that far down the rabbit hole to be talking about this in any kind of serious way. Otherwise, you're just click farming, frankly. Isn't there a mirror you can reflect a laser from? I believe so. Moon mirror laser. Yeah, literally. Here we go. Laser beams reflected between Earth and Moon boost science. This is from 2020. Dozens of times over the last decade, NASA scientists have launched laser beams at a reflector the size of a paperback novel, about 240,000 miles away from the Earth. They announced today, in collaboration with their French colleagues, that they received signal back for the first time, an encouraging result that could enhance laser experiments used to study the physics of the universe. The reflector NASA scientists aim for is mounted on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. Okay, so that one isn't on the moon. That one's been there since 2009. But... Let's see. One reason engineers placed the reflector on LRO was so that it could serve as a pristine target to help test the reflecting power of panels left on the moon's surface about 50 years ago. These older reflectors are returning a weak signal, which is making it harder to use them for science. So literally, they've been using the stuff on the moon for like 60 goddamn years. Yeah, like this is straight up QAnon flat Earth shit.
Of the nuclear arms race with Russia, trying to determine which nation built the best technology. It was a major moral victory for the Americans to beat the Russians to the moon. So even if NASA's plan was to actually land on the moon for real, they still had every incentive to lie about their success and cover up evidence about how they did it. The average person will never have access to space. The average person will never get to experience space. So we have to trust that everything that we're being told is true. Everything that we're being shown is true. And we
So what? Should we just believe that, I don't know, the Earth is on the back of like 10,000 turtles balanced on top of one another, all standing together on the back of like an elephant? Like what is the deal? Where does the skepticism end? Where does rationality reign supreme? You could again I just they put mirrors on the moon and like have verified this. Other countries have verified this.
We have to trust that astronauts are simply not sworn to secrecy as part of their role to shape our perception of space. I'm not saying that NASA completely fakes their space program. I don't want to say that NASA lies about their capabilities in space. But a lot of the photos
But that's what you're saying. You're saying that NASA's lying about their space capabilities. But not only are you saying that they're lying about their space capabilities, they're lying about what capabilities there are in space because they're lying about the nature of space. You've already said that.
Videos that NASA and other space agencies have created over the years have been manipulated or manufactured in some way. A lot of our identity in the West is derived from our understanding of space and our ability to master it with technology.
I don't know about you, but I don't think most people get their identities from space. What even are these points, dog?
baby boomers remember where they were the day Neil Armstrong first stepped foot on the moon.
Yeah, because that's fucking cool. That's fucking cool. People being on the moon is a huge milestone in human achievement, but it's not like the thing that defines their lives.
Moment changed the world forever. If it were to turn out that the moon landing was faked, even if we had proof that it was not real, it would still be almost impossible to convince most baby boomers because of how deeply ingrained it is into their perspective of reality and humanity. In one of his books, Bill Clinton said that when the moon landing happened, a simple tradesman told him that he didn't believe that it was real because them fellers on the TV can make anything look real. Bill Clinton admitted after his time in the White House that perhaps that simple tradesman was ahead of his time. What do you think Bill Clinton meant by that?
I don't know, probably from like the media fiasco surrounding like the Monica Lewinsky scandal. He was probably talking about that, or the fact that by the time he was out of office, it was the year 2000, and like computer animation was coming into its own. Like, yeah, I don't think he was referring to the moon landing there, but bud.
Of all of the conspiracy theories out there, the moon landing being faked is the easiest one to get into. Even
It's really
Joe
not.
Rogan used to talk about the moon landing hoax on
It's really not. You could literally just look into any of the science about the moon and the moon landing itself. You could just look into any of that and like double check it. It's not like a huge mystery. You just have to put in the work. But I guess it is a lot easier to just shrug your shoulders and say, it might have been faked. Who knows? Who could say? And then just ignore doing the work to prove it, I guess.
on his podcast back in the day as a champion of the theory, until he eventually invited Neil deGrasse Tyson on his show to debunk it. But you have to remember that NASA has always been sketchy since the very beginning.
I love how he keeps saying, now I'm not saying you shouldn't trust NASA, but they've been lying to you all along. Like, come on now. Come on now. Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson did debunk the moon landing, but he was using NASA numbers, which have been manufactured this entire time. Well, yeah, exactly, Valhalla Vidya. If the moon landing was fake, that would be a major coup for, like, China to be able to prove that, you know?
NASA was literally founded by a Nazi.
Like, it's actually kind of interesting because this is almost like an inverted American diabolism, you know? Like, it's in a way, like, it's only America matters in this. You can ignore all of the rest of the geopolitical, like, influences or priorities of other countries. Ignore all of that. Only America. And America faked the moon landing, and that's all that matters. But also, he's just incorrect here. NASA wasn't founded by a Nazi. Some of the scientists that wound up working at NASA were former Nazis due to Operation Paperclip. But, like, this is. I mean, you can literally just Google this in like 3 seconds. The National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958 creates NASA. President Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958. Like, it was a bipartisan group of Republicans and Democrats who like passed it into law, and then it was signed in by Eisenhower. Like, this isn't even that difficult to figure out.
Wernher von Braun. Infamously, after World War II, the United States recruited 88 Nazi scientists as part of Project Paperclip. And Wernher von...
Why does he say project weird? Why did he call it project? Also, yeah, Werner von Braun was like is known as like the father of rocketry, right? Like he designed the V2 rockets, which wreaked havoc on the UK and the USSR, right? Basically, for someone like him, the only sensible thing to do is to surrender to the United States, because if the UK and the USSR are both going to kill you, right? And I also just want to point out, like, see, in 1961, NASA employed 34,000 employees directly and 375,000 employees indirectly. So, just gonna throw out there that, like, 88 scientists, while useful, certainly did not compromise the majority of, like, the intelligentsia or workforce behind NASA.
Von Braun was one of them. So there have been a team of Nazis working at NASA since day one. I'm sure that's fine.
Wait. No. Not all of those scientists went to work for NASA. In your story here about Operation Paperclip, you mentioned one guy who went on to work at NASA. Did the other 87 go on to work at NASA? You didn't actually confirm that part. You just kind of said it. But even granting that that's true, in 1958, when NASA was created, they had over 8,000 employees. So we're talking, like, even if we grant all of them joined, we're talking like what, 1% of the workforce? Like less than 1%? All right. Were you expecting any of this to make sense? I guess I was expecting it to have more logic than absolutely none. I guess I was expecting more from someone who calls themselves, like, you know, a bastion of, like, logic and reason, you know, i.e. a skeptic. But maybe his skepticism is just truly, like, baseless.
How do we know that NASA is not...
He's never been logical? Well, I've never watched any of his content before, again.
...secretly designed to support their specific worldview? I don't want to pretend to have all the answers here. I've never been to space.
Hey,
I'm not
spicy
trying
diarrhea.
to convince you of anything specific. I just...
Then why are you making a video? If you aren't trying to convince anyone of something specific, or, like, have a goal here, why bother making this video at all?
want to demonstrate that people have legitimate reason to be skeptical about what NASA is really doing.
Yeah, but having a reason to be skeptical and having, like, a founded skepticism are two different things, right? The skepticism needs to be, like, fueled toward an actual end. But, like, the claims that you're making here are not merely skepticism. You're saying that they've been lying the entire time and that they have, like, this global conspiracy, and you haven't really indicated why you think that at all. Like, you're basically just saying, well, it seems like they're lying. And also, you know, in 1958, some scientists came from Nazi Germany. And also, you know, it just really seems like they're lying. And that's not really a basis for making an argument.
In space. So, what the hell is going on with NASA?
Hey,
On the
Susanne.
20th of December 2019, the United States Space Force was officially founded and signed into law as the newest branch of the United States military.
Okay, so now we're talking about Space Force. Okay.
Now, you can't just enlist in the Space Force. No, you have to already be a serving member of the United States military with good standing in order to apply or join. But what is the Space Force exactly? Why would a nation need a dedicated space service?
Well, I feel like the name is pretty self-explanatory there, Armored Skeptic. What is the Space Force? It's a force in space.
Currently, they only have 2 astronauts in the Space Force, both of which from NASA, obviously, and they only just recently revealed their uniforms in 2020.
Both of them from NASA, obviously, those lying fucks.
Which... In a way, the Space Force exists in response to the advanced nature of future warfare. It's kind of just a way to communicate to us that stuff's going on up there now. But the United States has been conducting military operations in space for a really long time now.
Thank you for gifting us
The
sub to Robert
NRO, or
Ansad.
the National
appreciate
Reconnaissance Office, is in reality the United States Secret Space Agency. One of the functions for NASA is to run as a smokescreen for the NRO. NASA operations are often used as a cover-up for secret NRO missions. If the NRO...
Okay, so now we've gone from NASA could be lying, maybe, but I'm not saying that they're lying, to NASA is a constant smokescreen covering up the secret operations of the NRO. What? Oh my god.
NRO needs to launch a secret spy satellite, for example, well then NASA will get carted out into the media to spin some story about a weather satellite or something. But the United...
I don't think that's true. We now we just have, like, SpaceX do it, or we just straight up have NASA launch a satellite. We don't need to tell the media anything about, like, what the satellite does, really. Plus, like, satellites can have multi-purpose.
The United States has been pushing to weaponize and militarize space for decades now. For example, infamously, the Star Wars program was being pushed in the media during the Reagan era. Ronald Reagan himself romanticized the idea of humanity.
The NRO just launches at Vandenberg. Yeah, like... God... It's not even... The thing is, the United States is such a world superpower. We don't really need to do things in secret like that anymore. Like, we're not in the middle of the Cold War. Like, we can... Like, the United States can basically do whatever it wants and throw whatever it wants into space. And frankly... I agree with you, KBS. The U.S. is a signatory on a treaty forbidding the militarization of space. However, I feel like Donald Trump creating a Space Force kind of, you know, violated that treaty pretty severely.
Coming together to fight against some outside force.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally
Insert Watchmen.
Think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
There was never an outside force, obviously. All of this propaganda was spun up as a way to get people more on board with the idea of having missile launchers in orbit above their head. which is against international law, by the way. There's also the issue of how much money NASA is budgeted from the United States government. NASA costs the United States taxpayer.
I'm not entirely familiar with the Star Wars program. I don't think that the Star Wars program was like a missile launched from space type situation. My understanding was that it was going to be used to detect and target incoming missiles. Like yeah, it was a system to shoot down ICBMs, but it wasn't like missiles to shoot down ICBMs that were positioned in space. They were still ground-launched missiles.
$50
already
million
exhausted by this
per day. NASA does. So a lot of the media coming out of NASA exists simply to justify the horrendous amount of money that goes into the department. Wouldn't it be funny if that money was being used for something else? Anyways, a lot of money is moving under the NASA name.
Like building space shit, something that's horrifically and prohibitively expensive right now, but in the future might not be due to the investment we're making today. I don't know, just spitballing a little bit here, bud.
In reality, NASA is just the face of America's various space programs and initiatives.
Yeah. That makes sense because it's an American institution dedicated to operating in space.
NASA is like the PR department for America's science division, curating a specific perception of humanity's presence and capabilities in space. NASA is almost like a propaganda department designed to make it look
Citation needed to show that NASA isn't producing results. You're not going to be able to find that citation because NASA routinely is able to provide incredible insights into the natural world, which in turn further what we might be able to do with our scientific progress.
like humanity is progressing scientifically and make it look like the United States is technologically superior. But we now have SpaceX for that today, with Elon Musk taking the role of master of technology theater, selling us propaganda about the future.
But again, he is actually launching satellites. Like, this is what I don't get, right? Like, I agree, NASA shouldn't contract with SpaceX. We should be doing all of this in-house. Like, there's no reason to, like, have a profiteering middleman to get us to space, right? Which is what SpaceX essentially is. But, like, to say that Elon Musk, one of the world's dumbest men, is in charge of all of the technology theater is insane. Elon Musk couldn't keep this a secret if he wanted to.
While simultaneously raking in billions of dollars of taxpayer money in grants. He is also a rocket man. And don't even get me started on Jeff Bezos and his penis rocket and his freaking cowboy hat. Speaking of which, do you guys remember Starman when SpaceX launched a Falcon Heavy rocket with a Tesla mounted to their payload pod? I did a spoof of that a few years ago. Okay, we're lighting you up in 3, 2, 1, launch!
Nope. Nope. You're not gonna get me. You're not getting me with the MCA. No, sir. I did not realize going into this that Armored Skeptic's content would be so heavily influenced by like essentially like channel awesome skit comedy. Like I didn't think this was a Doug Walker production. I'm sorry.
Well, the Starman launch gave us a spectacular view of the Earth from space. For those of us that watched it live, we saw that image of Earth in real time as the car floated off into space. It was a magical moment because humanity had never really seen an image like that before. And I got excited that SpaceX might actually show us some of that fun stuff that NASA was never really able to broadcast. Well, strangely enough, during a follow-up launch that was also being broadcast, they cut the live feed early before we got that beautiful, spectacular shot of the Earth from space. Apparently, because it's illegal to broadcast live footage of the Earth from space. Why in the name of all that is good and holy on this green Earth would it be illegal to broadcast the world from space?
Because people might be able to get sensitive information about not just like locations important to US security, but important to other countries' security. Like it's like a military security thing, not just like a I would imagine that would be the reasoning, but doesn't like the International Space Station? Like wait. Oh, but it's from NASA. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's from NASA, guys. You can't trust them. Due to either loss of signal between the station and communications network? Interesting. But we can go back. There we go. Oh man. Look at that, guys. We're breaking the law right now. Who could have thought that maybe he'd just be lying? Yeah, maybe the difference is that the ISS is in like low Earth orbit and doesn't like pass over any satellites. I don't know. Sure is pretty though.
What the hell are they hiding? Alexei Leonov was the first person to ever spacewalk outside of a space capsule in 1965.
Terrifying.
Later that year, the United States performed their first spacewalk as part of the Gemini missions.
Terrifying.
This footage is possibly the fakest official NASA film ever produced. There's an awkward moment where astronaut Ed White floats motionlessly out to the end of his tether, and right then, as he looks at the camera, he very clearly turns his entire helmet to salute. This is the first, last, and only time in history that an astronaut has been seen turning his helmet in space. This should be impossible. Pressurized spacesuits are not designed to have articulating helmets, and
The the helmet has the ability to rotate. Can we see? Yeah, the spacesuit helmet of the Gemini spacewalk was able to rotate. So yeah, nah, confirmed. He's just like, oh, spacesuits can't turn. I'm not gonna bother looking that up. This is crazy how lazy this video is. I guess there's a reason they call him Cosmic or Armored Skeptic and not armored researcher.
The astronaut's head is not usually fixed to the inside of the helmet to allow them to do this anyways. But even if this suit was designed to allow the helmet to turn, the air pressure against the seals in the neck would create far too much friction to allow the helmet to turn. Astronaut Ed White is basically in a glorified flight suit. He's like in pajamas.
Can I get like a diagram of the flight suit? This like yoink. All right. I think this is the right one. Yeah. It was in this suit that Ed White made the first American spacewalk. Okay. Let's take a look. Here's the helmet. Okay, full pressure helmet. Detachable sun visor clipped to the helmet. Replacement of the pressure helmet and neck ring with a zippered hood incorporated a clear, fixed polycarbonate visor with the astronauts wearing modified Navy-style aviator crash helmets. Oh, here we go. Thank you, KBS. There we go. Yeah, you can literally see like the ring. The ring right here where it is allowed to like turn. Jesus Christ. Aren't those skeptic dudes all about rationality and science? I mean, one would have thought, right? One would think, and yet no effort was done.
He's wearing a balloon that's ready to pop. The last thing you should be able to do in a suit like this is turn the head. When talking about another spacewalk with
Source, I made it the fuck up.
Astronaut Michael Collins, NASA was caught faking imagery again when they re-released a photo of the astronaut that had already been previously published. Only this time, they blacked out the background and reversed the image. This is clearly the same photo again, just altered to make it look like the astronaut is in space. The original image was taken here on Earth in a studio during an equipment test. A lot of the Russian footage that was produced during the space race era was faked or altered in some way as well.
Oh, so that's That's the conspiracy. All countries are faking their space technology. Gotcha, bud. Totally, dog. Just out of curiosity here. Do, 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 do. Yeah. Nah. Don't think this is faked. Sorry.
The astronaut is in space. The original image was taken here on Earth in a studio during an equipment test. A lot of the Russian footage that was produced during the space race era was faked or altered in some way as well. A lot of the media that came out of Russia during that time was just straight up propaganda. The very first man in space was Yuri Gagarin. The very first person in space was Yuri Gagarin, a Soviet cosmonaut. Pretty much all of the footage that we were shown of Yuri preparing to take off on his historic launch was clearly filmed on an earlier day as preparation. The cockpit shots, for example, are too well lit. The controls are not even operating, he's just flipping dead switches. Alright, there are a million reasons why.
Yeah, because it was put out as like a propaganda piece. It would make sense that they wouldn't film it the day of when they're busy trying to make sure that the launch goes well and they don't blow them up.
Why our international space agencies could be faking imagery in this way. I mean,
this isn't faked imagery. It's just imagery taken on a different day. What? That doesn't mean that he didn't get shot into space. My God. Buzz Aldrin is like 100,000 years old, and I'm pretty sure he would still like clock this guy in the face.
maybe they are conducting those missions exactly the way that they're telling us, but for some reason it's impossible to produce reliable footage while in space, right? Maybe the radiation of open space damages film or interferes with cameras in some way. But
it does do both of those things if they're not adequately shielded, yes. But also, like, that would, even if it did, that wouldn't indicate, like, that you have any kind of a point here.
What if that's not the reason that they lie to us?
What would the reason
What if
be?
they're trying to hide something?
Like what?
What if they don't want us to know something?
Like
People
what?
have long questioned the validity of the live feed footage we get from the International Space Stations.
Okay, so it's illegal to film in space, but, you know, the International Space Station has 24-hour footage, but we're also just not going to believe that because NASA's a liar, and they are hiding something. So what? I was lurking. Why did Sip for Rust get banned? Because the second somebody said that they were a troll, they said, fuck off, you zero IQ loser. And I don't know, that's pretty rude. Kind of a violation of community conduct.
Orbit. One time, George Bush Sr. was taking a tour around NASA, and near the beginning of the video, as they're walking through the ISS control center, you can see a feed on their screen that's supposed to be depicting an astronaut that is currently in space during the filming of this video, but for some reason, instead of showing him in the open hallways of the International Space Station, which astronauts usually have as their background in their videos, this footage shows a gridded blue screen like you would find in the background of a studio that uses special effects.
This is the level of discourse we're on. There's blue on the International Space Station, ergo, it's faked. So again, he's not just saying that the moon landing was faked. He's saying the International Space Station itself is faked as well. This is literally like a descent into QAnon flat Earth shit. I'd prefer if you kept it to a minimum, Kiwi Burb.
I've seen endless
Brother
footage
does
coming
live
from
in
the
Silly
International
Land.
Space Station, and this time that Bush toured the ISS Control Center is the one and only time I've ever seen a
Never forget that Greg believes he's the new Messiah. Wait, Wild Weasel, Armored Skeptic thinks that he's Jesus? Sorry, he thinks he's Jesus too?
CGI placeholder screen in the background of one of their shots. People have speculated that this is proof that NASA uses CGI and augmented reality to fake what happened
Do you have like a clip or something of him saying that, or like a link to back that up? Because that'd be really funny to just throw up on screen.
on the International Space Station. Maybe the astronauts that were shown on television are simply actors, and what's actually happening on the International Space Station is something much more secretive. But people on the internet have been pointing out anomalies from
Oh, just check the thing with the photo. It was never used by NASA as a spacewalk photo, only in the biography of the astronaut and not as a spacewalk photo. So basically, it's just a lower quality photo that was used in his biography. That's of course, Sabcat. Of course, that's what it is. My God, I can't believe. Like, these people are just so fucking dishonest. My goodness. My God. Only brain-dead parasite lowlife scum like you believe the moon landing fraud. Just out of curiosity, what is the why is it a fraud? Like, what is the motivation behind the fraud, and how is it a strong enough motivation to last like the last 60 years as a mainstream narrative, despite all of the incentive in the world for, you know, non-US countries to debunk this? I'd like your answer on that one. He says it in his videos about the Green Man. What the hell is the Green Man? Well, yeah, spicy diarrhea. That's my general assessment as well. But I would love to actually have an answer from one of these crackpots to, like, like, why do you think this? Like, what is the motive? What do you think the motivation is? You, the person who sincerely believes this, what do you think the motivation is here? I just want to know. Honestly, Matter Ursa, this is the most fun a Twitch troll has been in a while. I'll allow it. Moon is made of cheese. We have to keep France from knowing. Inform yourself. You don't know anything about the history of NASA. Again, what is the motivation for the fraud, the moon landing fraud? This is a straightforward question. Just give me your best answer. What's the motivation? Why are they doing the moon landing fraud? How has it been how has that motivation remained so strong over the last 60 years? I just want to know. Give me like a specific concrete answer. To avoid the empire to crumble. You think that if NASA revealed that, like, space doesn't work the way we think it does, the United States would cease to be a world superpower? That's your argument? Just to be clear? Do we have an anti-moon landing, Chud? Yeah. If NASA revealed that, that would cause a civil war. Wait, a civil war between who? Wait, who would be going to civil war against each other? I'm fascinated. Complete collapse of institutions. How would that lead to a complete collapse of institutions? Like, the United States would still have, like, nuclear weapons. We'd still have the strongest military on the planet. Like, how would it lead to a complete collapse of institutions? Those institutions aren't propped up by, like, the moon landing. They're propped up by the massive US military. Trust would be gone, but it doesn't matter if trust would be gone. Like, we have the strongest military on Earth. Right? Like, you might not trust the government when it comes to space anymore, but you'd certainly trust the barrel of their guns. Right? I'm just fascinated by this. So also, like, Japan just landed like a lunar rover on the moon. Is that faked as well? Like, in your worldview, like, Japan just landing its lunar rover on the moon is also faked? Like, 20 people killed, you are really ignorant? Wait, I just want to know, are all of the other people who've landed stuff on the moon also lying? What about the lasers that are able to be bounced off of, like, the arrays on the moon and bounced back to Earth? I'm fascinated by this. Okay, Mitramasti, you have to engage with me, otherwise I'm just going to ban you. Because I can't, for obvious reasons, can't have you in my chat just telling other people my therapist fucked your mother. For obvious reasons. For obvious reasons, okay? So, like, just answer my questions, you know? It's I gotta know.
A white name. Disgusting.
And if you can behave yourself and not keep telling people to go fuck themselves, you're more than welcome to stay, despite having an insane worldview. Anything gets reflected on the moon? Is the moon made up of mirrors? What? What about all the other countries that have landed stuff on the moon? What, Japan, like, just like a month ago, landed a lunar lander on the moon. Higher albedo than Earth? What about the other countries? But also, even with higher albedo, it doesn't make, like, rocks on the moon act as mirrors. Other countries went, not the USA. Okay, so other countries have been to the moon, but not the United States. So it's not that like NASA would reveal like that the universe doesn't work the way we think it does. It's mostly just that we'd find out that the United States lied about something. And that would cause a civil war?
EU another white name. Gross, get that out of here, BWA.
Lily Love Stuff, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Coconuts Julius. So, this is getting fascinating. There are livagars everywhere for those with eyes to see. True. So, I'm fascinated by this line of reasoning. Okay, I think we're done with ads. So, Mutramasti, if your entire conception around this conspiracy theory is essentially that if the United States was found out to have lied about something, it would cause a civil war, and that civil war would be fueled by a lack of faith in U.S. institutions. Do I have that about right? I got 5 minutes of ads, so missed it all. Well, in a nutshell, Mutramasti, your contention is essentially that if the United States were revealed to have lied about the moon landings, it would cause a civil war due to lack of trust in American institutions. Right? Is that about right? Yes? Then why don't like America's enemies just prove the moon landing was fake?
And another one to ride ourselves of BWA. Also civil war over the moon landing being faked as wild.
True, Lily Love Stuff. Thank you for gifting Sapcat a sub. So I guess my question is, like, your contention is that just the United States faked the moon landing, but why would these other countries that have done moon landings not debunk that? Because, like, in the United States, like, we say we left stuff on the moon, right? We left, like, lunar landers, mirror arrays, etc. Why would they not simply debunk that? Because, I mean, surely, like, Russia or China have powerful enough telescopes or satellites to be able to see debris on the moon from, U.S. moon landing, right? The United States alleges that we did 6 of them. Because they blackmail the U.S. government. They blackmail the U.S. government for what? To do what? How does that work? I don't know, they're under the counter details. Well, you're the one who's saying that that's how this works. Right? Like,
It doesn't matter. Even if you given 100% proof, they will still come up with some bullshit.
it just seems weird to me that the United States has the most powerful military on Earth, and like, I guess my other question is here: why do you think that like the United States being revealed to have lied would cause a civil war? Specifically about the moon landing, because like the United States has been revealed to be liars about a lot of other things. You know, details about Vietnam, different clandestine CIA operations around the world. The United States has lied about a lot of things that have directly killed thousands to tens of thousands of people. In some cases, they've covered up the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. But that hasn't perpetrated a civil war. What is different about this one? You know, like, well, Vijo Mutramasi tried to provide a link earlier, but Twitch doesn't allow links. Yeah, I mean, like, just in my lifetime, off the top of my head, like, the United States lied about weapons of destruction, mass destruction in Iraq. That didn't lead to a giant civil war. Because that would push the finger out of the dike a positive lie. In what way is it... I'm sorry, can you clarify that? In what way would that be different? It's like, are you really just saying that the difference is that like it's a lie about something good the United States did, and it turns out we really didn't do the good thing? Like, I don't know, usually revolutions are fought over like, I don't know, lack of food or housing, or taxation without representation, like material things. They're not usually fought over lies about the moon. I just want to know, like, what is different about this lie that would cause millions of Americans to risk their lives in open combat against the US government? Because I gotta be honest, I don't think most Americans give a single shit about the moon. Well, Vijo, Mutramasti, to their credit, already answered that question. And it is that, yes, they are all in on the conspiracy because it gives them unique and wonderful leverage to get the United States to do something. Effectively, they are blackmailing the United States somehow to do something. Not exactly clear. What's this about the moon war? Apparently, if it was revealed that the United States lied about landing on the moon, there would be a civil war in the United States. The Moon Wars. I guess I'm gonna give this, like, I don't know, 30 more seconds, a minute more, and then I'm gonna just move on because tired of waiting for responses to fairly straightforward and simple questions. Dun. All right, moving on. We're not even halfway through this video yet, guys.
International Space Station footage for like 15-20 years already. I wanted to do a video years ago highlighting my favorite examples, but most of that footage has been wiped off of YouTube. It used to be so much easier to find stuff on this. So instead, I found a clip of an American bringing these points up on the record to demonstrate what I'm talking about.
There's now clear evidence of NASA using numerous
regret voting
methods to
for
grossly
this.
mislead the public about astronauts being on the International Space Station.
Let this be a lesson to all of you. Democracy is a mistake.
Interior ISS scenes from NASA's own live feed, the use of wires, harnesses, green screens, and virtual reality have been detected to achieve the appearance of a weightless environment. Examples of this include astronauts fading.
I love, can we just say that, like, I love that he's presenting as evidence a random guy showing up to an open public comments section of a county commission. That this is what his evidence is. He has time to, like, comb the internet for this shit, but not enough time to actually do any research about any of his other claims. Cool.
Been detected to achieve the appearance of a weightless environment. Examples of this include astronauts fading in and out of the screen, green screen glitches, grabbing objects that aren't really there, pulling on invisible wires, getting tangled in their harnesses, and even astronauts appearing out of thin air. This begs the obvious question. If they're really up there, why are they using Hollywood techniques to fake the footage? Outside the International Space Station, during spacewalks, air bubbles have been recorded on numerous occasions. How is it possible for air bubbles to be present in the vacuum of space? I once questioned astronaut Scott Kelly about this phenomenon. His body language and answers only created more questions. In 2013, astronaut Luke...
I once asked him stuff, and he looked like he was uncomfortable, like he was talking to some kind of freak or something.
Luca Parmitano nearly drowned during a spacewalk when his helmet filled with water. This happened again just last year. Air bubbles, helmets filling with water, and drowning. Are they in space or are they underwater? Now, what's really interesting is that they train for space.
Those aren't air bubbles. They're not air bubbles in space. Does he think that? I'm sorry. Does he think that, like, in Hollywood movies, to get, like, the effect of 0G or low gravity, they just film underwater? Is that he's alleging, like, they film underwater and then they just remove the water in post? That's insane.
Spacewalks in an underwater pool with a complete ISS replica. Now, surely they aren't filming these spacewalks in an underwater pool and then editing them to appear if they're in space. Because that sure would be something, wouldn't it?
There are countless lunar mission
Oh my
anomalies.
God,
I don't
dude.
really want to go through them all, mostly because most of them have already been debunked. But there are still a handful of concerns.
I love how he's halfway through this video before he offhandedly mentions that most of these conspiratorial claims have already been debunked. Then why Why bother with all of this? This is conspiracy nonsense.
That have never really been satisfyingly answered about the original Apollo missions. First of all, how the hell did their film for their Hasselblad cameras survive traveling through the Van Allen belt? Look how good these photos are.
Oops, someone called it the Van Allen belt. Who threw that in chat like an hour ago? I know one of you did. How is he so dumb? Well, I guess there's a reason why, despite having 451,000 subscribers, this video that's 3 weeks old only had 39k views. You know? I legit can't stop smiling and laughing. I'm glad you're enjoying this, Rambe. I'm baffled by this. They've all been debunked, but I'm here to rebunk. Oh, fuck me. Photoshop was a technology invented in the 1930s by the Nazis, and it was been used over the decades to fake the moon landings.
The astronauts on the
and hide the massive ice wall that stretches around the flat Earth.
Apollo missions used large Hasselblad film to take these photos, and the radiation from the Van Allen belt should have riddled this film with dots, making it useless before they could even take these photos. Hell.
Can we just look up moon photos radiation? Can we just take a little bit of a look here? Damn. We're gonna go with the OGs from 2001. This website is literally just like an amazing debunk from 2001. Oh my god. All right. Radiation. Oh my god. Okay. Here, maybe film. Ah, here we go. Wouldn't the radiation and the temperature extremes of the moon damage or destroy equipment, especially vulnerable items like photographic film? Most equipment, including photographic and television cameras, was designed with special protective measures so as to allow them to operate properly in the moon's harsh environment. As for equipment and photographic film, the radiation on the moon was not high enough to damage or even fog film to any perceptible degree, and most other equipment is much more rugged than photographic film. Bingo! In fact, real quick here. Yoink. So this is the science.org as of September of 2020. China's lunar lander was actually one of the first times they did a surface radiation measurement of the moon, and radiation dose is 200 times that at Earth's surface. But that means it's safe for long-term human exploration. Let's see here. Okay. The device measured hourly radiation rates and found that astronauts would be exposed to roughly 200 times the radiation levels as people on Earth. The dosimeter's placement inside Chang'e 4's Chang'e 4 probe provides partial shielding, much as an astronaut's spacesuit would be to their body, so the findings are quite applicable to human explorers. The measured dose is about 5 to 10 times what passengers on an intercontinental flight from New York to Frankfurt, Germany receive when the plane is above parts of the protective atmosphere. Though high for Earth-based standards, radiation is one of the known dangers of spaceflight. NASA is legally prohibited from increasing the risk of its astronauts dying from cancer by more than 3%, and these levels remain below that. So, like, it is more radiation, but it's still not, like, that much radiation. And frankly, for long-term, like, exploration of the moon and, like, existing on the moon, like, we could up the amount of radiation shielding like we provide them with, frankly. Yeah, you know, the moon's pretty cool, you know? It turns out pretty cool stuff. Relevant? Oh, radiation dose chart. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, sleeping next to someone. Oh my god. You get irradiated by sleeping next to someone. I guess I'd never thought of it in those terms. Eating 1 banana, 2 blocks. An arm x-ray. Dental x-ray. Background dose received from an average person over 1 day. Airplane flight from New York to LA. So you get pretty irradiated. But not as much as a chest x-ray. And a chest x-ray is just 1/3 of all of the doses here combined. Let's see. EPA yearly release limit for a nuclear power plant, right here, which is like 4-ish times all of this. Maximum yearly dose permitted for U.S. radiation workers. Damn, even from a chest CT scan, you get a lot of radiation. Didn't know that. Oh, wait, I didn't scroll all the way down. "10 minutes next to the Chernobyl reactor core after explosion and meltdown." Jesus Christ. Okay, so all of the doses in the green chart combined here equal about 7.5 of these red boxes. Okay. Lowest 1-year dose clearly linked to increased cancer risk is like 3.25 red boxes. Like, my god. Okay. And then severe radiation poisoning is still like, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is still 16 times this. Huh. This is very interesting to me. Thank you for sharing this. The moon also has plenty of helium-3, which is a clean and efficient form of energy, and it's not radioactive. It's true! And the moon has a lot of other precious minerals that we could use to create solar panels for massive space-based solar arrays. And you want to know what else is really cool about all of this? Boom. Turns out we have now successfully beamed power from space to Earth via satellite solar arrays, which is very cool. Essentially, we are able now to collect power in space and then shoot it down to Earth via like microwave radiation to power collectors. So basically, you can have a far more efficient and constant source of solar energy. You know, theoretically, anyway. I don't know. I just think this is cool. Anyway, let's get back to this dipshit.
The Van Allen belt should have been lethal to the astronauts themselves. How the hell did the Apollo
It's because it's not lethal to the astronauts themselves. That's why.
astronauts travel through the Van Allen belt without experiencing any adverse effects? I mentioned this in a previous video, and I said that NASA didn't know about the Van Allen belt yet. They had theorized about the belt, but nobody had ever interacted with the Van Allen belt until Apollo 11 passed through it twice, once on their way to the moon and again on their return trip. Yet not a single Apollo astronaut has ever mentioned a single thing about their experience passing through the Van Allen belt.
That would be because largely radiation is imperceptible to human beings, so they don't feel anything really passing through it, especially considering they're in their spacesuits, which have radiation shielding, and they're in a spacecraft that also has radiation shielding.
Many years later, a group of astronauts traveled to about a...
Astronauts, especially a lot of astronauts who've worked in like zero gravity, their bodies are completely fucked for the rest of their lives, essentially. If you work in zero gravity and in like space, like your body like disintegrates when it gets back to Earth. Like it's not good. The fact that Buzz Aldrin is still alive is pretty incredible considering.
600-kilometer orbit above the surface of the Earth, and even though they never entered the Van Allen belt, many of the astronauts complained of disorientation. Apparently, the astronauts kept seeing flashes of light even when they had their eyes closed. Radioactive particles were whizzing through their head, and their eyes were interpreting that as light. If that had happened to a roll of film, when developed, it would be covered in white dots. So you'd imagine that if that many Apollo astronauts had traveled through the Van Allen belt that many times, that at least one of them would have complained about adverse effects. When that later
Just here's the European Space Agency talking about Van Allen belts. Just real quick. Are there any risks for humans passing through the Van Allen radiation belts? There are mainly two types of radiation risks to humans. Firstly, what we call deterministic effects, which can be long-term, low-level, or short-term, high-level radiation exposure. They result in disruption to the central nervous system, suppression of hematopoiesis in bone marrow, cataracts and other vision impairment, and acute radiation sickness, which would be a significant risk on extravehicular activities, EVAs, or spacewalks. Secondly, there are stochastic effects, which are normally thought of as an increased chance of cancer. Especially in the case of stochastic effects, heavier particles present greater risk of impact on human biology because those heavier particles have a greater ionization over a short distance, but it's not necessarily the Van Allen belts that pose the greatest risk to humans, but indeed, especially in the inner belt, there is some risk there. So they do not present such a serious issue. Why? Because we know where they are. We know when we're going to fly through them. We can do that quickly, and we know we can protect against them through material shielding and by keeping astronauts inside the spacecraft. It'd be a very poorly planned mission if it suffered seriously from the Van Allen belts in terms of human health. There you go. What poses a greater risk? Galactic cosmic rays represent a greater risk because we know we can't protect against them. Solar radiation storms also pose a more challenging risk because these are not easily predicted and they affect all of geospace with increasing severity. And the further one is from the protective shield of the Earth's magnetosphere, essentially. How many astronauts have crossed the belt so far? Technically, any astronaut on the International Space Station crosses some parts of the belt at a low altitude, but all Apollo mission astronauts will have flown through the radiation belts on their way to the moon. The Apollo missions followed ballistic trajectories, so they passed through the belts very quickly, which reduced the risk from this population to a very low level. Apollo missions took only 4.5 days to get to the moon. The moon is just under 400,000 kilometers away, and the radiation belts only extend to around 60,000 kilometers, so not a huge fraction of that time is necessarily spent in those belts. In terms of numbers, there were 9 Apollo missions transiting the entire belts, Apollo 8 and 10 and 17. Apollo 9 was low Earth orbit only, and 3 astronauts actually made that journey twice. Jim Lovell on Apollo 8 and 13, John Young on Apollo 10 and 16, and Eugene Cernan on Apollo 10 and 17. So altogether, 25 individuals, an exclusive club which will only be expanded now 50 years later. So, yeah. Let's see, did these astronauts report any radiation-related symptoms? That's hard to say because there's a lot of personal data that is protected. Some astronauts have reported seeing radiation, some kind of snow or flashes of light that they can see even when their eyes are closed. This effect is well reported, and more long-term effects are harder to quantify because if somebody gets cancer, there's no definite way to say whether that has come from the radiation in space or through some other behavior. So we try to think of it in terms of mitigating the additional risk from radiation. So I feel like that very clearly answers all of his questions, and I found it in 3 seconds of Googling.
Crew in the space shuttle experienced flashes of light in high orbit. CNN published an article in response to that experience.
The radiation belt surrounding Earth may be more dangerous for spacewalking astronauts than previously believed. Scientists say the phenomena known as the Van Allen belts can spawn killer electrons when the Earth's magnetic field changes. These electrons that are being studied could have an important effect not only on satellites, which has happened in the past, but could also affect the astronauts by creating large doses of radiation that could influence their health. The
Which is true if you were dumb enough to position a space station inside the Van Allen belt, which now that we know that that those exist, we would never do.
Electrons can penetrate through various materials, including spacesuits, and can pass through, in fact, the walls of the space station.
And one time it kind of sounded like NASA almost admitted that they'd never sent humans through the Van Allen belt before.
Before we can send astronauts into space on Orion, we have to test all of its systems. We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
Yeah.
My favorite anomalies come from video footage of the astronauts.
Yeah, if we send them through for prolonged periods of time, but if we just shoot them through, it's not that much, it's not that big of a deal.
It's operating on the moon's surface itself, the best of which are examples of astronauts being caught on wires. There are a few shots that the camera seems to pick up a really bizarre lens flare where for some reason the light goes straight up instead of sprawling out. It's possible that that's a unique effect of that specific lens that they're using, but it's also possible that that light is revealing that those astronauts are hanging from a wire. Maybe that footage was filmed in a studio.
Yo, guys, I just figured it out. He uses the word skeptic to basically just, have plausible deniability for his dumbassery. I've pieced the mystery together. This is insane. This is insane. Well, you see, this light flashes for a brief second, and that proves there's a
Thought
wire.
I saw a white name there for a second. Look of triumph.
Ms. Milena, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. That flash of white wasn't a white name. It was actually a wire. But still, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. It was swamp gas reflecting off of Venus. No, guys. It was light reflecting off of the white glaciers that surround the world, okay? The light reflects off of the fresh snow and ice directly into our faces, and occasionally it just causes little white flashes on the screen, okay? They don't want you to know that truth, though, because then you'd want to climb the ice wall and see what's on the other side, and she doesn't want that.
Studio, and maybe that wire is holding up the astronaut to simulate 1/6 Earth's gravity. People have long...
I can make things up, too. This is actually an ancient alien artifact. It might look like a scrunchie, it might smell like a scrunchie, it might have pieces of my hair on it like a scrunchie would, but actually, it's an alien artifact. It's the only explanation for all of its other properties. Like, look at this. It's the only explanation for its ability to stretch like that is alien abilities. Smell like a scrunchie? It smells like my shampoo and conditioner.
Theorized that filmmaker Stanley Kubrick helped NASA film the
It's
moon
how I communicate with the aliens.
landing footage using movie magic to simulate space. A lot of these techniques he would have practiced and perfected while making 2001: A Space Odyssey. And years later, Stanley Kubrick used one of NASA's special low-light lenses to film one of his movies. So it's
When he says to film one of his movies, what movie is this, chat? What movie is he filming there? Is that Eyes Wide Shut? Is he trying to say that they used Stanley... it's the NASA faking technology in Eyes Wide Shut? Is that... Oh, God. It's Barry Lyndon? Okay. But it'd be so much funnier if, Stanley Kubrick had to use all of that NASA moon landing fakery technology to film a wild orgy movie.
NASA's special low-light lenses to film one of his movies. So it's possible that Stanley Kubrick had a special relationship with NASA. Oh, funny story. One time, an old lady was arrested for trying to sell a moon rock
Missed
that
one
was
eye.
gifted
Yo, thank you for gifting a sub to Alice McGee. Let's go.
to her late husband by Neil Armstrong himself. NASA claimed that either the moon rock was fake or she had stolen it. Apparently, she had been keeping this moon rock as a memento of her husband, but she decided to sell it online one day to try to make ends meet. Well,
You shout'll sell your used scrunches so people will know what you smell like, lol.
That's a really weird comment, but thank you for the $5.
apparently, it's illegal to sell moon rocks. Nobody knew this. Obviously, nobody knew this. The
Apollo moon rocks are NASA and US government property which cannot be sold or exchanged to private citizens. So that is true. But also, like, yeah, because that seems like it was never, like, something that should have been given to a civilian in the first place.
I started late and just caught up. This guy is much easier to listen to at 2x speed. Also, the fart wars have prepared me for the moon wars.
Micah, thank you for the $5 dono. This guy would be much easier to listen to at 2 times speed, and yet I feel like we need to listen to him at normal speed, because even though his voice would be easier to listen to at 2x, I think the amount of bullshit would be hard to parse at 2x.
Police didn't even warn.
But why can't civilians own moon rocks? Probably because of the immense government expense that went into procuring the moon rocks, and how they probably want to retain them for, like, scientific study without, like, Earth contamination. Also, there was probably, like, a time period, like, right after the moon landings, where those were some of the most valuable material on Earth.
Warn her that she was doing something wrong. Nobody told her, even though there was ample opportunity. No.
You gotta smoke that
Instead,
moon
the
rock.
police ran a sting on her. They pretended to be buyers of the rock, and when she showed up to sell it, they arrested her. America. What the hell is that all about? What qualities could a moon rock possess that make it too precious to sell? It's just a rock, right? Surely we should be allowed to examine a simple moon rock in order to determine its validity. I mean, why can't we examine a moon rock? Moon rocks are real, right? Well, another funny story, a moon rock that was...
Let's see. So just to be clear, in the case he's talking about, that lady was never charged with a crime. So she was never charged with a crime, and she filed like a counterclaim, and which resulted in like a formal like statement by the court against like the NASA agent that like greenlit the sting, and basically they found that he knew she was unarmed, that his search warrant had been fully executed, and that Davis had sought to sell the paperweights illegally, or that Davis had sought to sell the paperweights legally. Because the Moonrock paperweight had been seized and both Davis and her husband had already been searched for other weapons and contraband, Connolly had no law enforcement interest in detaining Davis for 2 hours while she stood wearing urine-soaked pants in a restaurant's parking lot during the lunch rush. This is precisely the type of unusual case involving special circumstances that leads us to conclude that a detention is unreasonable. That's from the Ninth Circuit Court. So, just as an FYI, the court did find in favor of that old lady.
Gifted to Holland by the Apollo astronauts, was determined to be petrified wood. You heard me, a moon rock that was given to Holland by the Apollo astronauts was examined, and the results said that it was petrified wood from right here on Earth. God, that's awkward. But moon rocks are real. Trust me. There was
just 1 second, because again, we have to fact check every goddamn thing that comes out of this guy's mouth. All right. Yoink. The Dutch National Museum said Thursday that one of its prized possessions, a rock supposedly brought back from the moon by U.S. astronauts, is just a piece of petrified wood. Let's see. I wonder if there's any additional insight here. Let's see. Zandra van Gelder, who oversaw the investigation that proved the piece was a fake, said the museum will keep it anyway as a curiosity. It's a good story with some questions that are still unanswered, she said. We can laugh about it. The museum acquired the rock after the death of former Prime Minister William Drees in 1988. Drees received it as a private gift on October 9, 1969, from then U.S. Ambassador J. William Middendorf during a visit by 3 Apollo 11 astronauts, part of their Giant Leap goodwill tour after the first moon landing. Middendorf, who lives in Rhode Island, told Dutch broadcaster NOS News that he'd gotten it from the U.S. State Department, but couldn't recall the exact details. I do remember that Dries was very interested in the little piece of stone, the NOS quoted Middendorf saying, but that it's not real, I don't know anything about that. So this isn't like the Apollo astronauts like got back, took like their bag of samples, went to like, you know, the prime minister of the of the Dutch, and we're like, hey, here's a stone. No. This is just probably a case where like NASA did not want the part, or like the U.S. State Department for whatever reason didn't want a part with moon rock samples, which is pretty understandable, I think. Yeah, they didn't want to give him a real moon rock. You want your own real moon rock? You send your own goddamn people to the moon. How does that disprove moon rocks? It doesn't, but his implication here is that they presented a fake moon rock because there aren't real ones. That's his implication here. His implication is they faked the samples they brought back because they didn't actually go to the moon.
Also, some really funny lunar orbiter footage of the Apollo crew that can only be found in one documentary. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. In this footage, it appears that the Apollo crew faked the size of the Earth from their perspective, making it look much smaller than it should, by putting a cover over their window, and instead of having the camera right up against the glass, while filming it, they had the camera on the opposite side of the pod. So it's possible that the Apollo 11 crew never left low Earth orbit, though it's also possible that that documentary completely hoaxed.
Well, they probably weren't using like a handheld camera while they were in space. Like their cameras in the 60s were not as good as the cameras we have now, obviously.
Hoax that footage. There are a lot of hoaxers in conspiracy communities. A really important point that—
Wait, no, a funny thing happened on the way to the moon, just lied. Let's see. Just out of curiosity here. Is written, produced, and directed by Nashville-based filmmaker Bart Sibrel. Okay, is a proponent of the conspiracy theory that the 6 Apollo moon landings were elaborate hoaxes. Okay, claims the moon landing is a hoax, makes claims about supposed photographic anomalies. Yo, thank you for gifting Fight Mage a sub. Hell yeah. Is this the Armored Skeptic nonsense? Yep. Okay. Oh, literally, this is just every claim that Armored Skeptic has made. Okay. Yeah, making claims about supposed photographic anomalies, disasters such as the destruction of Apollo 1, technical difficulties experienced in the 50s and 60s, the problems of traversing the Van Allen radiation belts. Sibrel proposed that the most condemning evidence is a piece of footage that he claims was secret and inadvertently sent to him by NASA. He alleges the footage shows Apollo 11 astronauts attempting to create the illusion that they were 130,000 miles away from Earth, roughly halfway to the moon, when he claims they were only in low Earth orbit. The film also, which is like all of these have been regurgitated by Armored Skeptic. So I guess he watched this and was not all that skeptical of this film, ironically. The film also asserts that NASA's early experience in rocket technology and inconsistencies in NASA's records could point to a possible hoax, and the space race was actually a race to develop armaments with a huge budget allocated to the Apollo missions. The film's premise is that NASA perpetrated a fraud because of the perception of the United States could land men on the moon before the Soviet Union. Be a major victory in the Cold War since the Soviets had... No, this is just a regurgitation of everything that Armored Skeptic has said. like he just repackaged all of those claims into a 30-minute video instead of a 47-minute long video. Yeah. Jim McDade wrote that the movie was full of falsehoods, innuendo, strident accusations, half-truths, flawed logic, and premature conclusions. The only new and weird in this film is the claim that the video shows views of Earth that were actually filmed through a small hole to give the impression that Apollo 11 was not in low Earth orbit. Bart has misinterpreted things that are immediately obvious to anyone who has extensively read Apollo history and documentation, or anyone who has ever been inside the Apollo command module or accurate mock-up, says McDade. Neat. Moving on.
Bring up is that NASA lost all of the telemetry data from Apollo 11, meaning they have no record of the flight. The most important rocket launch in human history, and they lost all the telemetry data?
Just real quick. Just like real fucking quick. Okay? Have an image of what the telemetry data would have looked like. Yeah, I was trying to find like a good picture of what like NASA telemetry storage would have looked like back in the 1960s. And for those of you who don't know, it was recorded on like magnetic tape, essentially, which is not very durable to the ravages of time. It's a you can pack some data on it for sure, but it doesn't hold up over time. So it's not exactly the ideal storage method if you want things to last for like 60 years or 50 years even. But also, as a FYI, if you look up Apollo 11 telemetry data, this is the first result. It's a report put together by NASA, and it goes over the data recordings of Apollo 11. What most people did not realize, however, is that the television footage they viewed was actually inferior to what ground station engineers saw as the raw footage arrived from the moon 250,000 miles away. While the public saw blurry ghost-like images, the engineers working at NASA's tracking stations in California and Australia saw clear, crisp video on special television monitors capable of displaying the unconventional video. Although NASA engineers knew that the scan converter would degrade the original picture quality, they viewed it as an engineering trade-off. NASA wanted live television, and the only way to provide it was at the time, was with scan conversion technology despite the degradation. In the triumph of the day, no one at the tracking stations considered these differences, and certainly the public was unaware. The engineers boxed the 1-inch telemetry tapes, wound onto 14-inch canister reels, which served no other purpose than to provide backup if the live relay failed, and shipped them to the Goddard Space Flight Center. From there, the tapes were sent to the Washington National Record Center in Sweetland, MD. Engineers never saw the backup telemetry tapes again. Fast forward to the present. Much has happened over the ensuing years. Today, it's hard to imagine life without the internet, cell phones, and high-definition television, innovations made possible by the revolution in digital technology. What was impossible nearly 40 years ago is now possible. The Apollo 11 telemetry tapes certainly provide a case in point. Using digital technology, technicians today could convert the raw signals into high-quality video, allowing the world to see what only a handful of engineers saw in 1969. The desire to show the Apollo 11 moonwalk as it originally was received and recorded is what catalyzed a core team of U.S. and Australian Apollo enthusiasts, former NASA contractors, and a current agency employee to find the 1-inch telemetry backup tapes. They wanted to give the public a clearer picture of that iconic moment in American history. Listing the support of the current Goddard Space Flight Center employees, these individuals spent thousands of hours tracking down and interviewing former NASA employees, poring over memos, telex messages and databases, and visiting possible storage sites. Each had a special role in the effort. Unexpected outcome. By all accounts, the epic-like search has not ended as anyone had expected. The searchers never found what they set out to uncover. Aside from a few canisters of Apollo 9 telemetry tapes still stored in the WNRC, the Apollo-era telemetry tapes no longer exist anywhere. However, this disappointing discovery does not mean the Herculean effort that spanned more than 8 years ended in vain. The team uncovered the best television-formatted recordings of the Apollo 11 moon landing and has secured NASA funding to apply modern-day digital technology to dramatically enhance the quality of these tapes. Will the public truly experience what just a handful of engineers witnessed 40 years ago? The answer is probably no. However, our search for the original tapes gives rise to the restoration of what we do have. Now that the 40th anniversary is upon us, it is fitting that we release the enhanced video, explain why the raw feed tapes are not with us today. So basically, if you want the extended story of like what the hell happened, that's what the rest of this report is about. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Although the employee who headed the organization could not recall details, his supervisors did. A former chief of Goddard's Network Procedures and Evaluation Division, code 860, recalled instructing personnel to strip all identification from the magnetic tapes slated for recycling and to degauss them. However, the former employee stressed that code 863.1 never would have destroyed data on a particular tape without first getting approval from the Johnson Space Center, which had full control over the Apollo data. Neither he nor anyone else, however, could recall the name of the person who would have made that call. Given the vast number of tapes involved, something must have triggered the recycling operation. And basically in the mid-70s, the magnetic tape industry had begun using a synthetic product to apply magnetic oxide to tapes. However, the new binder proved troublesome. After only a couple of years, many of the tapes became unusable because the oxide would stick to the tape heads and strip off when the tape was played back, a condition known as sticky shed syndrome. By the early 1980s, NASA was experiencing a critical shortage of magnetic tape. The associate chief of Goddard's Network Procedure and Evaluation Division recalled someone from Goddard's Network Logistics Depot calling him to request additional recycled magnetic tapes to make up for the procurement shortages caused by manufacturers failing to meet NASA's minimum quality specifications. To see if he could obtain more details about the shortage, Nafziger visited Goddard's library in February 2007 to review old copies of the center's weekly management reports, knowing that Goddard had withdrawn 25,443 boxes of magnetic tape in 1981. Nafziger examined that year first. It did not take long to find a reference to the tape shortage. So, yeah, basically they were recycling old tapes in order to, have the capacity to store new data. Yeah. Hope still remains, however. A few months before Nafziger learned the details of the tape shortage, He also made another discovery that could prove providential for those who want to make the raw feed recordings available to the public via modern-day technology. When he and Labar visited the WNRC in the fall of 2006, they decided to search the documentation files related to the Apollo 11 mission. In one dusty box, they uncovered a Goddard teletype message indicating that NASA had hired the Applied Physics Laboratory, APL, near Baltimore to modify another tape recorder, an Ampex VR660C that used 2-inch magnetic tape to handle the slow scan television signals received only at the park's tracking station. Nafzger had no knowledge of this experimental program, even though he was in charge of the Apollo 11 television ground support effort. So basically, that is when they found like this highest quality television recording of this. So, yeah, they found the APL tapes, and now they're in the process of restoring those. But yeah, it would appear that the original Apollo 11 raw footage were recycled during this during the 70s and 80s. So fun stuff. You can all read the full report here. I'll link it in chat. Boop, boop, boop. But by all means, let's continue just spreading baseless conspiracism here, Armored Skeptic.
Well, that's not all. They also lost all of the original film footage from the broadcast when they accidentally re-recorded over the tapes.
That's not even accurate here?
Oopsies. We never got to see that footage with our own eyes. Nobody did. There was no independent media coverage of the Apollo landing. Instead,
yes,
NASA projected the footage of the live feed onto a screen in their own public viewing room. And the media was only allowed to record that screen with their own individual news cameras. So instead of getting crisp live footage, we got highly degraded second-generation footage of the moon landing. So
I just went over this report with you guys that came out like years ago. We actually have like a date here on the report. We have a date at the end of the report. Well, I know that this is widely publicly available. It didn't just come out in the last 3 weeks, okay? Anyway, and he's like, "Oh man, it's so weird. No one's seen this footage." Yeah, crazy.
If they faked the moon landing, this is just one more way that they could have covered up all of the imperfections in their studio footage. There's also an inconsistency with the way that the astronauts move around on the moon's surface from mission to mission. On Apollo 11, the first landing, the astronauts were awkwardly waddling around the surface, very slowly moving across the terrain. But in later missions, like Apollo 14, the astronauts were very confidently jumping around.
Yeah, it's almost like they had different spacesuits or something. It's almost like they had better technology, and the previous missions allowed them to know what was and was not safe to do. Because the first time they were on the moon, they were keenly aware that if anything went wrong with their suit, they were going to fucking die.
14, the astronauts were very confidently jumping around, weightlessly flying across the surface. It's almost as if...
Also, minor nitpick here. They're not weightlessly flying around the moon's surface because literally they're coming back down. There's gravity on the moon.
jumping around, weightlessly flying across the surface. It's almost as if there are two different sets of physics for each individual.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that, Callum McAllister. One of the priorities of Apollo 11 was to test different walking gaits to establish best practices for future trips to the moon. That's really cool.
Individual mission. Like, the rules for the physics are different. The original crew of the first Apollo mission had their doubts about the possibility of their mission's success. The captain of the crew, Gus Grissom, even called the rocket a lemon. Gus Grissom hung a lemon from the door of the capsule and said that the rocket would never make it to the moon. Sadly, the original crew died when the capsule caught fire during a test. Astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were chosen to replace the original crew. And Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin...
Is he alleging that NASA killed the previous crew because they were insubordinate? My God.
Aldrin were the very first men to ever walk on the moon. The very first try. No failed attempts. No mistakes. Wow. The only Apollo mission on record to...
I don't even know what the implication is there, right? Like, what is his implication? That the other guys went to the moon and died, or were just killed? Like, what is the implication?
Fail was Apollo 13, though that crew managed to survive and return home to Earth safely. Other than that...
Oh, shit. The reason that initial capsule exploded was because they were using pure O2 as the atmosphere? That's crazy.
Every other Apollo mission succeeded, with astronauts walking on the moon. It's just mathematically very implausible. Right after their return...
Why would it be mathematically implausible? They ran into a problem with the engineering and construction of the initial capsule when it blew up. So they found out the reason it blew up. They changed accordingly, did more testing, and then pulled the launch trigger. Like, yeah, if you just strap a guy to a rocket, there's a pretty good chance that guy's going to wind up blown up. But if you are setting out with the goal of not having that guy blow up, you can run a lot of tests to make a capsule of some kind, let's say, that doesn't result in that guy getting blown up.
Return to Earth, the Apollo 11 crew looked totally disengaged and disinterested when giving a press conference about their trip to the moon. They should be excited, but instead they're just sad. This footage...
They're tired. They've just gone through, like, literally one of the most harrowing experiences a human being can possibly go through. They got shot to the fucking moon. They walked on it. And then they came back. And it took them, like, half a month. They were tired and scared the entire time. The last thing they want to do when they get back is give a press conference. They want to go and hug their family and, like, take a couple goddamn naps.
Footage is depressing and confusing. What's going on here? Why are they acting so broken? People have suggested that these astronauts are suffering from guilt and shame for having to tell America lies, for pretending to be heroes. Neil Armstrong always acted...
Could it be that they're exhausted from doing something no human being has ever done before in the history of mankind? No, it must be that they're telling lies. Okay.
very evasive when asked questions about the moon landing. He never wanted to talk about it. During one interview, when asked about a specific experience in space, Neil Armstrong allegedly jumped up out of his seat, ran out of the room, and began vomiting in the hallway. This could be a stress response, or it could suggest that the crew underwent some form of hypnosis or mind wipe after their...
Yes, which is the more plausible suggestion here. On the one hand, intense PTSD from doing something no one else has ever done before in human history that is both extraordinarily life-risking and dangerous every second you exist in that state. Or could he have been mind wiped and hypnotized? Who can say? They're both equally... No. It's the PTSD one. It's the PTSD one. It's obviously the PTSD. Like, obviously. Obviously. My God. Is this guy real? This guy is not only real, he has almost 500,000 subscribers on YouTube and has been one of the prominent, like, reactionary conservative figures for, like, the last 10 years. I've never watched any of his content before, but, like, this is seriously pathetic and sad.
Their mission. Neil Armstrong may have been trained to have an adverse reaction when asked to recall specific memories about his mission. Either
citation needed.
way, since that first press conference, Neil Armstrong has never done one single on-camera interview. Ever. Neil Armstrong has always avoided talking to the media.
And you know what? Good. Fuck the media. Let that man who walked on the moon alone, okay? He walked on the moon. Is that not enough for you? Does he need to give you more of his life? Let him just live out his days as a goddamn hero.
In fact, the few times that he was on camera, he said some really weird...
I thought you said he never went on camera or talked to the media about it, you ding-dong. Which is it?
And cryptic stuff.
During the space age, we have increased the knowledge of our universe 1,000-fold. Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Truth's protective layers? What the hell is that supposed to mean?
It means we have to work to uncover truth. You know, like it means it takes work to like discover or push boundaries. It takes work to like be able to articulate the laws of the universe, the way things work. It takes work to be able to understand things. Something Armored Skeptic would know if he ever attempted to make sense of anything using actual facts and actual research, as opposed to watching one or two conspiracy documentaries and then just regurgitating them as a YouTube video.
He said that at the White House, by the way. Buzz Aldrin, too, became a massive alcoholic after the moon landing, only later in his life getting his act together so he could go out into the media to describe his experience. One time, Buzz Aldrin even punched a documentary filmmaker for making him swear to God that he walked on the moon.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon?
This is a hotel.
We'll call
the
police.
We
pay.
Come on in here, we'll call the police.
Why don't you swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon? You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
So clearly Buzz Aldrin was experiencing...
Good for Buzz. Good for Buzz. That guy called him a coward and a liar to his face. And Buzz Aldrin did not strap himself into a rocket to be shot hundreds of thousands of miles across a deadly interstellar void to walk on a foreign body and then shoot himself back just to be called a coward and a liar. All right? Sometimes the truth has a protective layer, and sometimes turns out the truth has a very strong punch for an elderly person.
Experiencing a lot of stress about this. Something about the moon landing experience changed these men into a depressed, recluse shell of their former selves.
Yeah, maybe it has something to do with all of the crazy, insane weirdos who started pushing cameras in their faces, calling them and their families liars. And maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just spitballing here. You know, I'm at this point, I'll admit I'm pulling something out of my ass here for comedic effect in my response video here. But at least I'll admit that is what this is, as opposed to Armored Skeptic, who will just make an entire video doing just that.
Buzz Aldrin has also been very careful with the language that he uses, never directly saying that he landed on the moon or that he walked on the moon. In fact, on a few occasions, he's been caught using coded language that suggests that he never went to the moon. This is the same kind of coded language that I heard Bob Gimlin use when he was describing his experience seeing the Sasquatch. I know that I made a video debunking this years ago, but one time he told a little girl, "We didn't go there."
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's my question. I want to know, but I think I know. Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened.
And this wasn't even the only time Buzz did this in an interview.
I feel like this clip is disingenuously cut out of context from what he was about to say. I hate also that, like, he's like, yeah, we debunked this years ago, but, you know, I'm gonna bring it up now as if it you know, it raises some interesting points. Like one, obviously he's talking to a child, so he's trying to pick his words carefully. Number two, he's old. Number three, like, I don't think that the full context of this clip is him explaining to this little girl that he didn't actually go to the moon, when we just saw him throw a punch over that.
Perhaps Buzz Aldrin is trying to be a good Christian and avoid lying. So none of this
I'm so tired.
This fake footage that we've discovered of space actually proves that NASA has never been to space. I believe that they have actually been to space. But I think people have proven that NASA doesn't always show us what they're actually doing in space. Again, I'm not—
How? Citation needed, motherfucker. You did not prove that in this video.
not trying to prove that the moon landing was fake. I just want to demonstrate that—
there is an international coordinated conspiracy to deny you the truth of what's happening out there. Somewhere out there is the truth, lurking out in the black eternal void, and it is waiting for us to uncover it. But in order to do so, we need to reckon with the fact that there are powerful forces at work on this very earth of ours that don't want us to know the truth. And the truth is that man didn't go to the moon in 1969, okay? We never went to the moon. It was all faked. It was all faked. But why? Well, obviously, it's because there's a certain group of beep that want to beep the world and beep you and beep your dog. This seems like an ancient aliens grift. Well, I would argue, and I've said this a few times now recently, that this is emblematic of the conspiracy black hole, the conspiracy singularity that we are hurtling towards. Okay? Yeah, he's too much of a coward in this video to even say that what he believes. And clearly what he believes from this video is that the moon landings were faked for some reason that he never goes into. Speaking as one of the beeps, yeah, this guy has definitely revealed our evil plan.
People deserve to be skeptical that the official story is true. People deserve to be skeptical of the photos and the videos that we've been shown. We deserve to be skeptical of the stories that we're told.
Yeah, you can be skeptical of them, but there's a difference between being skeptical and being willfully blind. And you're definitely the latter.
We deserve to be skeptical about what's really up there. So I ask once again, why does NASA fake it?
That was really pathetic. Truly, my ability to procure you guys fine, vintage brain rot is unparalleled.